For our main story, I spoke to OMID MALEKAN of Columbia Business School about what UST's crash means for the stablecoin industry, whether regulation will come sooner, and more. So to start things off here, there are multiple ways to design stablecoins, some riskier than others. And can you tell us, what potentially made Terra's riskier than others? And are there any lessons learned here?
Terra was built on this so-called algorithmic model that has been tried many times over the years and almost always failed. And what makes it riskier is that unlike, say, a vanilla fiat-backed stablecoin that's just backed by ideally cash in a bank, an algorithmic stablecoin is backed by a cryptocurrency whose primary reason for existence and source of value is the fact that it's the thing that issues a stablecoin. And the synergy between these two different assets, it's like a virtuous cycle when things are going well, but can then become vicious and turn into a death spiral when there's suddenly loss of confidence for any reason.
And a lot of the interest around, Terra has been because of the personality around Terraform Labs CEO. And so do you think that played any type of role in the rise and fall of both Terra, USD, and Luna?
Definitely. It's almost like a Icarian story where even though algorithmic stablecoins are sold as being more decentralized than other stablecoins, in this case, Do Kwon, the head of Terraform Labs, had a significant amount of hard and soft power, almost like a cult of personality, which is both what attracted a lot of people to Luna and UST. But then again, when things started going wrong and suddenly Do Kwon was silent, it led to the overall loss of confidence that led to the collapse.
So how big of an impact do you think Terra's collapse will have on stablecoins broadly, but also algorithmic stablecoins specifically?
So I think algorithmic stablecoins as an idea are dead. There are other ones out there, not as big as UST, and they're all in some state of a run or failure to maintain the peg right now. On the one hand, that failure has sort of made the other more conservative stablecoins like the fiat-backed ones seem very appealing in comparison. But the open question now is also what kind of a regulatory response does the entire industry get? I think the fiat-backed stablecoins like Tether, USDC, etc., which have been around for a long time, when you add them up, they actually account for a lot more adoption than something like a UST. And even in the last few weeks, while UST plummeted, crypto prices in general have been going down. The other more traditional stable coins, from all reports, have been doing just fine.
And you mentioned regulation. There's been chatter on Capitol Hill for some time that stablecoins need to be regulated. And do you think that this moves up the timeline for some kind of legislation? And what would that ultimately look like?
I think it actually probably significantly speeds up the timeline just because of how big UST was and then how quickly it failed. As to what the legislation looks like, this is being debated within the industry, and there are two schools of thought. One is that we're just going to get a draconian crackdown on all kinds of stablecoins to the extent that they just become difficult to use. The other school of thought is that it is this vacuum of sensible regulation that leads to experimentation with riskier models like UST. So perhaps this will motivate regulators to give more palatable regulations for the more conservative approaches to stablecoins in order to help them sort of win and take total market share.
And does the threat of regulation, or possibility maybe to some, does that change the investment case at all for the industry?
In the short term, perhaps, but in the long term, I actually think that the more regulated crypto becomes, the more it helps the overall investment thesis. Because as you know, most of the world's capital is controlled by institutions, not individuals. And institutions as a group are generally wary of entering markets that are not regulated.
And finally, we've seen lots of investors fleeing, not just Terra USD, but Tether as well. So how has this affected the reputation of these types of investments long term?
So there was a temporary depeg of Tether at some exchanges, and we've also seen, interestingly, the overall supply of Tether has shrunk since the UST debacle, and that seems to have come at the benefit of the more transparent, sort of more trustworthy stable coins like USDC or BUSD. So I think it's possible that this is the beginning of a rotation from the entire crypto investor community to more trustworthy and more reliable stable coins, even within the fiat basket.